right. Let me go ahead and share screen.
Oh, wow, we have to consent. Okay.
Oh, that must be new.
I think that's new. Yeah.
Wow.
I've never seen it before.
So thank you for consenting. I appreciate
it.
So this is an introductory essentials of EFT, which is emotional freedom techniques. I'm going to talk about foundational concepts, and I'm going to really introduce you to evidence-based EFT tapping. So the evidence-based is, I think, really important for those of us who are clinicians, and it is the sequence essentially that's used in the research. And what I've said is, if you want what the kind of results that the research gets, you do what the research does. So I've had the training for evidence-based EFT in a couple of different places, and I'll talk about that here in a few minutes. So I'm Dr. Suzan Thompson. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Virginia. And like I said, we're going to do a brief introduction to EFT. We're going to practice. So you're going to get some good practice in this, so that you have some good experiences. And we'll talk about how to introduce the tapping to other people if you want. Oh, I have essential EFT. That should be basic EFT. So we're going to do tap and breathe. We're going to do basic EFT, and we'll practice. And then I asked already if you have water. It's a good idea to have some water handy. We usually pause after tapping around and sip a little bit of water, and help me to remember to talk about what that is about here in a little bit. So I have actually been traditionally trained in mental health counseling. That's what my doctorate is in. It's actually technically counselor education and supervision. But I've been licensed for a lot longer than that, since '97. And in 2001, I had a lot of transformation. I started private practice earlier in the year, and later in the year, I separated from my then husband. So a lot was going on, and I actually was learning EFT at the same time that I was starting private practice, because at that time I was doing self-pay practice only, and I had a whole lot more time than I had clients to start out with. And I thought, well, I might as well learn something. And a friend of mine loaned me, I love this, in 2001, it was VHS recordings.
Yeah.
Of Gary Craig, and I'll talk about Gary Craig, demonstrating EFT, and there were hours and hours and hours of these recordings. So I, as a good student I tapped along, and by the end of the summer, so the separation started at the beginning of the summer, and by the end of the summer, when it actually happened, I was in such a different place than I ever thought I would be. I, at the time, was teaching as an adjunct faculty member at Old Dominion, having started my private practice, and I then became full-time at ODU and was there from 2005 to 2014. It seems so long ago now, and I guess it is. Part of what happened in 2001 for me was I just got introduced to so many different kinds of healing modalities, which changed my paradigm. And I think EFT changes the paradigm about what counseling therapy is. I got introduced to Reiki. My friend who loaned me the recordings was becoming a Reiki master. She practiced Reiki on me. And around the same time, I attended some training on the reconnection and reconnective healing to level 3. I participated in a 1.5-year energy or wellness awareness training that was local. I've also participated in training on multidimensional healing, crystalline consciousness technique, which is another healing modality, to level 2. So I just love to learn, and I would much rather learn something from the inside than just have somebody talk about it. I have been an EFT level 1 practitioner through ASEP, which is the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. That's where Michelle's getting her training, which I highly recommend as a professional organization for those of you, that are interested in this kind of thing. I took an evidence-based EFT masterclass with Lori Layden in July of 2019, which actually the reason that I even was able to go to that class, it was specifically for trauma. It was after our local mass violence event in May of 2019. And a lot of my clients actually were in that event. And then it's been a year and a half, January 2020, before the shutdown. I completed levels 1 and 2 with EFT International. So those are two of the ASEP and EFT International are 2 training programs that I highly recommend. So just so that you know, this class is not a certification course. It's a brief introduction to the techniques. It's intended to provide helpful information and experiences as you begin your EFT journey. So I'm assuming that you're beginning. So what is EFT? EFT is emotional freedom techniques. You might see it in some information without the S, but actually it's a whole set of techniques. We're just going to learn 2 for today. It was developed by Gary Craig after he took Roger Callahan's training on thought-filled therapy. I'll talk about that here in a few minutes. It is a set of tools and techniques that are energy-based. And it's based on the same traditional Chinese medicine approach as acupressure and acupuncture. So that's based on the meridians, which are energy pathways. There are at least three energy systems in the body. One is the meridians, which are energy pathways. 2 are the chakras. A lot of people hear about the chakras. The chakras, those are energy centers. And the 3rd is the aura or biofield, which is that field that's around us. So this is a combination of some energy along with some modern counseling approaches, which is what I appreciate about it. It does work with emotional, psychological, physical, spiritual energies by focusing on an issue and to transform the energy of it. So it's interesting. What happens is, well, a lot of us are trained in some cognitive behavioral therapy. It's different way of reframing. So we naturally reframe when we use EFT as opposed to a learned reframe with CBT. And I'll talk a little bit about some of that later too. It does at this point have a solid base of research to support its use with anxiety, PTSD, and other stress-related concerns. Peter Stapleton has done a good amount of research. He's one of the primary researchers these days, along with Dawson Church. And David Feinstein writes quite a bit about EFT as well. He's done some more summary studies. So EFT is based on thought field therapy, TFT. So that was developed by Roger Callahan, who at one point studied traditional Chinese medicine. And what actually happened for him, I just love this story. You know, we all have those kinds of insights in a session. And he had a flash of insight with one of his clients who had a lifelong water phobia. Mary is who she's named. So Mary was coming to Callahan for months, and he had that flash and he says, tell me the story and tap right here. So this is the stomach meridian, which is often related to anxiety. And so she told the story while she was tapping on that point. And by the end of tapping, she says, it's gone. And both of them were really surprised. So Callahan was working out of his home at the time and had a pool in the backyard. So he's like, well, and this is what we do with tapping, is that we do checks. We check to see how effective and if the intensity has gone down. So he did this check. Hey, Mary, what do you think about what would it be like for you to go and stand next to the pool? She's like, I'll do one better than that. And she ran and jumped in the pool with her clothes on. And again, both of them were really surprised. So the foundation of this techniques, those are often called almost like one-hit wonders. They're like the one session transformations, and that doesn't happen as very often. It's only happened maybe a couple of times for me over these years that I've been practicing EFT. I guess it's 20 years now. So the foundational statement is the source of all distress or disease is an imbalance or disruption of the body's energy system. Gary Craig says it's the source of all disease is help me, is negative. It's the negative energy related to emotions. So I think, yeah, I reframed that. The source of all distress or disease is an imbalance or disruption of the body's energy system, as opposed to what we're typically trained in is that it's thinking that changes that are our emotions, but it's actually a disruption of the energy that changes how we think and how we feel. And so EFT, TFT as well, they're emotional versions of acupuncture, except needles aren't necessary. And instead, we tap on specific points on the body. And Roger Callahan was pretty specific about choosing those points. They're ones that, number one, are accessible. Number two, most of them are endpoints on meridians. So that's something to keep in mind. So it's simple, rapid, and effective brain-based approach to relieving stress and trauma, as well as other emotional and physical difficulties. What I'm aiming to do is to help provide some verbiage for you to explain it to somebody else. Like I said, it's based on an integration of acupuncture, acupressure, cognitive restructuring, which happens naturally. You're not forcing it. There's some mindfulness in it. There's positive psychology kind of woven in. And what it is seen to do is to re-regulate the amygdala. That part of the primitive brain, you probably have heard of this, that sends that fight, flight, freeze, faint signals to the body mind. And then I'll talk about here, it takes that charge out of memories, emotions, and physical symptoms. Even the current research will say that a particular way of thinking has a charge to it. There's a pathway that it follows in our brains and in our biochemistry. And so what this does is to take that electrical charge out, because our bodies are electromagnetic. So this works on that energy system. And it's gentle, easy to learn, and also simple. Thank you, Jets. So here's other phrases that you can use to describe it. It's a novel, brief intervention combining elements of exposure and cognitive therapy along with somatic stimulation. So if you need to have an explanation that you provide to insurance, say, then that's a great sentence right there. It's often referred to as psychological acupuncture because we're using two fingers tapping, and I'll talk about that here in a few minutes too. It's been researched in more than 10 countries. At this point, I think there are about 200 publications. This is, I meant to update this. And that it's the analysis of net traffic to the 5 most visited websites. And this is 2017, showed 4 million unique visitors. That's a lot of people. A lot of people are finding out about this technique. So this setup technique. So this is based on a different foundation than what we're typically trained in. It's about integration and holism. It's about everything is energy and vibration, that we as human beings function simultaneously on a lot of different levels that are interconnected. And if we treat only one level, the cognitions, we're only treating symptoms. And so healing, EFT is in that healing category and tends to integrate all the levels. So, so that's where it is a cognitive, somatic, and emotional set of techniques. So talk is not enough. And it's our job to, I think at this point, especially if you're working with people who have anxiety, who have trauma, to use more holistic methods. And I appreciate Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, because he does talk about the mind-body connection and really is a proponent for EFT as well as other somatic related kinds of therapies. And so if we're actually addressing multi-layer, then we facilitate more rapid change. And that's what people experience very often with EFT is a quick change that doesn't typically happen. We count on insight evolving in the therapy that we typically do. So this is my model for how and this is actually how Gary Craig described EFT, is that we have A is the activating event, B is the belief, and C is the cognition. And what happens is that the belief actually gets magnetically installed in our system, and it takes then an electromagnetic or electrical techniques to uninstall that belief. So some of the comparison studies, there are only a couple at this point, but they're consistent that compare EFT and CBT. They go actually pretty neck and neck, except EFT sessions are fewer. And at the 1 year follow-up or at the follow-up, the 6 months are still kind of neck and neck in terms of efficacy. But in a year, EFT just is flying forward. And what happens with folks who have experienced CBT is they start to backtrack. So I don't know about you, but I want something that's more of a permanent experience for people. So I'm going to actually let you take a look at this later, but I mentioned Dawson Church before. One of the earlier studies in 2012 was a randomized control study. Oh, I do need to talk about this one, because this one was one of those original studies that looked at what happens with the body's cortisol after an hour of tapping versus conventional talk therapy. This to me is really powerful. So meridian tapping reduces cortisol levels by an average of 24% with a high of 50%. Talk and control showed no significant change. So if we think that therapy is supposed to be a stress reduction strategy, it isn't as much as EFT is. So reduced cortisol levels in the EFT group correlated with the decreased severity and psychological symptoms as measured by the SA45. That's a pretty standardized measurement too. This to me is just says so much. And this study actually has been replicated more recently by Peter Stapleton. The reduction was so rapid and unprecedented that the lab delayed results back to Dawson Church. And he had to call them and say, hey, what's going on? They thought their equipment had failed or there was something wrong with the samples because of the rapid decrease in cortisol. Normally, cortisol goes down over hours and hours and hours. So this was huge. And like I said, the lab had to retest and they delayed their results because they weren't sure they were getting it right. I love that. So this is really this diagram comes from mindheartconnect.com, which is a great website. It's Peter Stapleton's website. So we just talked about cortisol after an hour of EFT. Cortisol is down 37%. Immune markers are up 113%. Pain is reduced 57%. Anxiety is down 40%. Depression is reduced 35%. PTSD symptoms are down 32%. Happiness, most people want to be more happy, is up 31%. Blood pressure, to me, this is kind of surprising, but blood pressure is only reduced 8%. Food cravings, this is really helpful for you to know. Food cravings is reduced 74% with the use of EFT. So if you've got clients who are like, I've tried it and I've tried everything, to use this specifically targeted toward food cravings is really, really helpful. So I think I said a minute ago that this is in an hour. These are the combined studies. So some of these may be over more time than just 1 hour. So here's the great news. We're in a group right here. Group EFT reduces cortisol by 43%. So aren't you glad you joined me today? So group psychoeducation, cortisol is reduced 19%. Reading magazines increases cortisol by 2%. It's more stressful to read magazines. All right, so I've talked about our one energy system. It's the meridians. I've mentioned the other two. So that's really the focus of this from this point on. We've got 14 meridians. You don't have to know this information. I found it really helpful as a little bit of a background because this is actually a chart that you can find on the internet. You can Google the main meridian channels and actually get this chart. I found it helpful with talking to clients about what are the meridians? What do they look like? Each of the meridians, there are 14 and they're paired. So they're paired, 6 of them are paired this way and 2 of them are paired this way. So that would be the central and governing are paired this way and all the other ones are paired this way. So when people say, well, does it matter which side of the body that I tap on? The answer is no, because you've got paired meridians. And if you tap here, it's an energy system. So you're influencing the system when you tap on the points, right? So I'm going to invite you to look further into the meridians if that's something that's interesting to you. I found it especially interesting to see where the meridians actually were and where the points, these are the acupuncture points on this chart. I find it really helpful. And this, I'm sorry I didn't include the citation for this. These are the tapping points and the meridian. So if you look at under the eye, where's under the eye? So that's the stomach meridian. It's about obsessive worry, fear, anxiety, emptiness, and disappointment. This is a chart that actually I put together, but it's based on information from an article that David Feinstein wrote. So it's something that's available out there. But these are the outside of the hand is the first one. Eyebrow, top of the head, we usually use next. The eyebrow, side of the eye, under the nose, chin, which is above the chin, below the lower lip, collarbone, just below the collarbone, under the arm, and I'll go over this here again in a minute, is just under the armpit and top of the head, which is, that's interesting. It's one of the central and governing. Under the nose is governing. So top of the head is governing too. So why don't I pause for a second and see if you have any questions. No questions?
I have a statement. It's been a while since I saw that form and I was looking specifically for, because I know for me and actual like client feedbacks, when they just do tapping on their own just at home, they gravitate towards specific parts and those correlated with anxiety specifically.
Yeah.
And for myself, like this feels good to do if I don't do the whole thing. And then I was like,
right.
oh, yes, anxiety. So
what I've done, thank you for that, Michelle, because what I've done with some clients, I've said, if you're in need of a shortcut, just do 3. If you're feeling anxious and you're needing or stressed, you can do 3. Under the eye, collarbone, and one of the ones that wasn't on there is the top of the hand. I've been using that because that was included in the training that I went to with Lori Layden and using it for trauma. And early on with the discussion about like what points are we really going to use and what, because we need to come to some agreement with research. What are the points that we're going to use with research? There was a lot of discussion about, are we going to include this point? It's called a gamut point. And, there were people who were like, we really need to include it. And the other was like, oh, I don't know. It's, it's not on the torso. Maybe it could be confusing for people. But I've been using it for the last couple of years with people, especially who have trauma and anxiety. So if I say this is a shortcut here, here, and here.
And in the trainings at ASAP, they include now like the
fingers,
and the specific gamut as.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you help me
for trauma.
For trauma. So help me remember to I want to demonstrate what the original Roger Callahan original recipe looked like. That's what Gary Craig called it. And so just so you can see what I was teaching people and what I was practicing in 2001. But for right now, our first technique is tap and breathe. It's one of the most basic. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is to focus on a specific issue. There are steps that are in your handout, but we're going to use this version here. So the tap and breathe, we're going to start on the side of the hand, which is between the pinky and the wrist. And you can tap, you can press and hold, or you can massage. Right? So you'll see tapping, but if I've actually had clients who have Raynaud's and it hurts them to tap. So we say just press and hold or massage. Right? So the side of the hand. So we're going to take a deep breath and slowly exhale. The next point is at the top of the head. So in the center of the head, about even with the ears, it is physiologically, it's where the plates of the skull come together. Michelle's already yawning because that's what happens when we start tapping. The body is like, oh, I know this. So take a deep breath and you can tap slowly, or I tend to have the speed that I have to keep reminding myself, slow down, slow down. So yeah, take a deep breath and slow exhale. The next one is called the eyebrow point, but it's actually just at the start of the eyebrow. So we have two eyebrows mostly. And so either side of the nose at that front edge of the eyebrow, either side. And if you know EMDR and you want to alternate tapping, that's another use of EFT. So, yeah. And I usually ask people, are you right or left-handed? I've just noticed that I'm using my right hand. So I'm going to use my left hand because most people are right-handed and I like to mirror what I'm showing people. So there. And the next one, we didn't do a deep breath. So take a deep breath here. Good. And we'll follow the eye socket around to the side of the eye, also on the bone. That's the side of the eye or corner of the eye. And if you've got glasses on, you might have to either lift your glasses or that might be a point where you massage. All right, so it is, I don't know if you can see, it's right at the edge. So it's where it's almost like that corner, it's that corner where the eye socket merges to under, the side to the under. So take a deep breath and slowly exhale. The next one's under the eye. So also the bone just under your eye in line with your pupil if you're looking straight ahead. Right. Deep breath. slowly exhale. The next one is called under the nose, which is actually between your nose and upper lip. And that actual meridian point is at the roof of your mouth. But deep breath in and slow exhale out. After that, it's under the mouth or above the chin. Traditionally, it's been called above the chin. So you might catch me saying above the chin or the chin point. And that actually is what's used in the handout that you've got. So it's right in that crease, right in the center too. Deep breath and slow exhale. Next one is called the collarbone point, and it's actually just under the collarbone. So it's an angle formed by your collarbone and the breastbone. So if this is like your collarbone and these are your ribs, what you're aiming for is this point right here. Okay. So like I said, it's just under the collarbone, and it might feel tender. That way you know that you're hitting it. Right. So with this one, you might see people tapping on one side or both sides. David Feinstein often taps by crossing his hands and tapping this way. I have tapped this way. I've also tapped where my thumb hits this collarbone and my other fingers hit that collarbone. So you can play around with what feels comfortable for you. Take a deep breath. Slow exhale. The next one is, can't see this, can you? Let me move mine. So if this is your armpit, it's about a hand's width below your armpit, or if you're reaching straight across, it more than likely will be tender. And then the question is, what do you do with this hand when you're tapping there? So a lot of times I'll cross over and put it on my shoulder because that looks kind of weird to be waving this hand around. Not that the whole thing isn't kind of weird. Right, so take a deep breath and slowly exhale. And the last point then that I'm including in this training is called the gamut. And it's called the gamut because of the original recipe. So if you look at your pinky, and between those two knuckles a little bit further down, there's a soft spot. It's called in traditional Chinese medicine a triple warmer point. So it's where I think two meridians come together, but it's a special point. So deep breath in and slow exhale. Good. So you can just check in, but and usually when we stop, we'll take a sip of water, get our electrical system more hydrated so that we can continue effectively. So let's do that one more time, all together instead of pausing to show the points. So we start at the outside of the hand, take a deep breath, and slowly exhale. I usually do 2 breaths at the outside of the hand. I don't know why, I just do. Take another deep breath and slow exhale. Top of the head, deep breath in. And the other thing that I do as I'm teaching is I'll alternate. One time I'll do one side of the body, and the other time I'll do the other side of the body. And slow exhale. Eyebrow is the next one. Deep breath in. And slow exhale. Side of the eye, deep breath. The ones that people usually start to migrate on are, and when I say migrate, I'm like, they'll end up somewhere else on their bodies. All right, is the eyebrow, they end up on their forehead. So you can do a slight correction, just say, oh, tap right here on your eyebrow. Side of the eye, they end up tapping on their temple, but it's actually below the temple. So deep breath. Under the eye. That usually is okay. They might come down, but that's okay because the meridian goes down too. Slow exhale. Under the nose. You usually get this one. Deep breath. And slowly exhale. Above the chin. Deep breath in. Slow exhale out. Collarbone. So it's just under the collarbone. Deep breath. And slow exhale. Under the arm. Deep breath in. Slow exhale out. And gamut. Deep breath. Slowly exhale. That usually helps for all kinds of things. And that would be where I would suggest that you get really, really good at knowing where the points are and a pace of tapping so that when you want to show somebody else, you've got it. And you know if somebody else has the points correct or not. Because some of the comparison studies have been done with sham points. So this would be a sham point right here, and this would be a sham point right here. So, but the thing is like people still get some results because they're actually tapping on other points as well. All right. So, basic EFT, evidence-based or basic EFT, it includes more information. So I use tap and breathe often to get a session started. We get in sync. It really is helpful for this format, virtual format. We get in sync with the other person. I've also used it if people are really like, if saying something sends them into overdrive, you don't want to be in overdrive. You want to kind of, you want to cap that and just tap so that they're not overstimulated. That's the trauma response, right? People get way overstimulated and they have a hard time coming back. So if you can catch that before it goes out, then tap and breathe is one way to do that. There are other ones too, but tap and breathe is what I would start with. So this is this is a great go-to for anybody. And it's what I teach folks in a first session of using EFT. Then we do the other stuff, which is what we're going to be doing here. So the steps for using EFT are start with what is, not what you want to be, but what is. So for example, I'm laughing because I got a lot going on right now. I'm selling a house, I'm buying a house, I'm moving stuff around, I'm working out of an office because I'm selling a house. I know I can't work at home right now. So I got a lot going on. I could pick anything. So I start with what the issue. And so I usually, as a clinician, I'm writing the specifics down and I try and do it verbatim for what clients have said, because words matter. What somebody else says matters because that's their trigger. So you write down the issue, the feeling, what's the feeling, the body sensation, those three elements, and assess the intensity on a scale from 0 to 10. So I'll give you an example today. So today I was making a phone call to get homeowners insurance for my new house. And I had limited amount of time. So I felt pretty stressed. Now, what I want to do using EFT is to tell it in this moment. So as I'm talking about it in this moment, what's my stress level? That's the intensity. Not when it was happening, but right here and right now. So as I'm thinking about that, it's probably a 4 when I think about it. It's so funny because if I'm by myself, I can't for the life of me come up with a number. But if I'm around other people, I'm like, oh, it's a 4. So now the next thing is to decide on a balancing statement. The recommended balancing statement, it's also been referred to in the past as a affirmation, but I've been saying more lately is balancing statement. So you decide on a balancing statement, and then you tap or press firmly or massage through those acupressure points, starting with the outside of the hand. It says starting with the top of the head, outside of the hand. I need to change that. And then reassess, and then lather, rinse, and repeat. So I'll go through those steps here in a few minutes. So I really would suggest that you write down a particular issue. Don't make it something that is a 10 right now, but make it something that's maybe 3, 4, or 5. Something that is bothersome, but not extremely stressful. So write it down. What's the issue? Do your best to tune in to what the feeling might be. So if somebody says, well, I'm stressed, it's kind of not a feeling, but I'll go with it to start out with. We can refine it in another round. And then the body sensations. So for example, I'll use myself. So that phone call, I was feeling pretty stressed. I'll use stress. I was actually anxious. I felt anxious. And as I'm tuning into my body right now, I just feel it in the back of my neck. And so those are the 3 components that make up the beginning statement. The the statement of the issue.
Setup statements.
Setup statement. Thank you very much. That's my lifeline. Thanks, Michelle. So there's a setup statement. The setup statement is a statement of the issue and the balancing statement. So we've just started to create a setup statement with those 3 components. You can, if you want to throw in the number of the intensity and then the balancing statement. All right, so step 1, take a look too. There's a great book, The Tapping Solution, written by Nick Ortner, that really has made EFT accessible. And if I didn't have everything packed away, I have extra copies of it. So I usually have one giveaway for a presentation. That would be my giveaway for this one. But I highly recommend it. Okay, so we just talked about that. Identifying a situation or event that you want to address. Identify the aspects, thoughts, feelings, body sensations. Rate the intensity now on that scale from 0 to 10. And then create a setup statement. So the recommended or the initial one is, I deeply and completely accept myself. There are other options in your handout. I will also send you a list of balancing statements that have come from the EFT group that I've been leading for some time. Last year, we started actually recording the different balancing statements that we've used for each group, and it's now close to 300 or so, after more than 300. Michelle's been typing up after the group and including them at the end of the email that we send out before the group meets. So if you don't know what to say I accept myself. The balancing statement, it says here affirmation. The balancing statement is a self-affirming kind of statement. I have clients who, when I say, well, the recommended statement is I deeply and completely accept myself, they're like, I can't say that. And so it's okay to use other ones. One might be, I'm going to be okay. Another I use frequently, it's okay to feel how I feel. Another one that I use is right here in this moment, I'm safe. That usually is useful for somebody who has some trauma, but in this moment, I'm safe is a version of that as well. So for this process, you're going to use the setup statement while tapping on the outside of the hand, and repeating that setup statement 2 or 3 times. I usually repeat it 3 times. Okay. I'm going over the steps. This is review, and doing it a couple of times. Tap through the other points, either saying a reminder statement or talking through the situation. You're going to tap at least 5 to 7 times or more, long enough to say what you're going to say in each point. Step 6, you're going to stop, take a deep breath. This is good. That's a good time to drink a little water. And then you're going to reassess. What's the intensity now on that scale from 0 to 10? And if something else came up, because things often do, make note of it and set it aside or include it in the next round. And then this is the lather, rinse, and repeat. If the intensity is more than 2, it used to be that they said to go to a 0, but what I've been seeing is Peter Stapleton talks about this, and the training that I went to with Lori Layden, to get it to a 0 to 2. And at a 0 or 2, often people will have an internal shift, and they'll automatically reframe. They'll have a new thought. So that's what I think is helpful to ask. Tap more rounds if it's more than that. And then you'll use the same information or whatever else has come up. And again, repeat as necessary to get the relief that you desire. All right, so here are some balancing statements. Here in a minute, we're going to actually tap on your issue. You're going to actually tap with me on mine, and you can say what's going on for you as I'm talking about mine. I'm going to ask you to write down three of these statements, and you can come up with one that you really like. One is, as I said, the recommended one is I deeply and completely accept myself. I accept myself. It's okay to feel how I feel. I'm okay. Maybe it's not as bad as it seems. This is temporary. I'm learning to handle it. I can choose to relax and feel safe. I'm safe now. There are literally hundreds more that we have in a list, and I'll make sure that you all get that. So write down 3, and you can play around with using them. And again, if you come up with one that you really like, maybe there's a comforting statement that you have a go-to already. I'll get through this. I know a few years ago I tried another job, and it was really complex. And what I was saying over and over again is, I'm figuring this out. I'm figuring it out. That was my go-to all day. I'm figuring this out. All right. So actually, I'm going to get really practical here, because often when you're learning a new technique, a worry comes up about how do you practice that? What are you going to do from here? So I'm going to ask you to really tune into, think about using EFT, starting with yourself. I highly recommend that you just start with yourself. You come off as much more authentic if you know what it's like with the folks that you're teaching or showing. So I'm assuming that there's a worry or a fear. Maybe it's something else, but tune into the feeling you have when you think about using EFT next. All right, so what are you worried about, or what are you afraid of? How strong is it on that scale from 0 to 10, where 10 is the most intense that it could be? And where do you feel it in your body? So right now, I don't really have much fear. I get a little stressed, but when I do these presentations, because it's already happened a couple of times, I'm like, oh, what's that word? So I'm not stressed at all teaching EFT. I really like it. But if I were thinking about teaching the original version of EFT and all the things that that go into the original version, I'd be like, ooh, that really still feels like a weird thing to teach. So it'd be like a 3 or 4. And I'd be worried that I would turn people off from the technique when I think it's this set of techniques, when I think it's just phenomenal. And so where do I feel that in my body? I feel it in my throat. So here's what that would sound like. Let's see here. Even though I feel whatever it is, because it's the issue, where it is in your body, and you can do a balancing statement after that. So tap along with me. You don't have to say it. I mean, I would suggest that you tap with me and say what I'm saying. And that actually is easy as an instruction to give somebody that you're working with. You don't have to worry about what to say. Just say what I say, right? And do what I do. So on the outside of the hand, even though I feel anxious, when I think about teaching the original version of EFT, I feel it in my throat. I'm okay as I am. So remember, we're going to do 3 times at the outside of the hand, and you'll just notice I switch, but you don't have to. Even though I feel anxious, when I think about teaching the original version of EFT, feeling it in my throat, I accept myself anyway. Even though I feel anxious, remember 3 times, 2 or 3 times, when I think about teaching the original version of EFT, feeling it in my throat, I'm going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So now we go top of the head. So we're going to condense it. This anxiety about teaching EFT, it's in my throat. And we can change the order of it. So the next one I'm going to say, it's in my throat, this anxiety, teaching EFT. Side of the eye, all the anxiety, teaching EFT, it's in my throat. Under the eye. Of course, I feel this anxiety. Now, that's something that I tend to do, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. It's in my throat, thinking about teaching EFT. Under the nose, teaching EFT. Why wouldn't I feel this anxiety? It's in my throat. Above the chin, it's all in my throat. This anxiety, teaching EFT. Collarbone. Of course I have this anxiety. It's in my throat, teaching EFT. Under the arm. It's in my throat. All the anxiety, teaching EFT. Last one, top of the hand, the gamut. Of course I have this anxiety. It's in my throat, teaching EFT. All right. So now I'm going to reassess, right? That's one of the steps. I'm going to say, all right, before it was a 4, now it's like, it's down to a 2. And like the thought that comes up is like, I got this. You know, people came for a reason, right? And that thought has been hanging out back there anyway, but I think that what happens with EFT is like, it clears the way for that kind of thought that's really a healthy thought to come forward. There's a theory right now that what EFT does is similar to memory reconsolidation, where you're pairing an old memory with something that's newer, and the use of tapping actually shrinks this one so that this one has a chance to take a forward step. So does anyone have questions right now? Comments even? So this is best done with lots of practice. So I was going to talk about ethics here in a few minutes, but I'll wait till the end. Let's do another round or two, and I'm going to back up to this one. All right. And even though there's some information that's missing, we'll still use it. So I mentioned before that I made this phone call earlier today, and actually, like the phone call's done. You see, I'm already like, oh, it's done. I'm not even worried about it anymore. So that happened, and sometimes things happen when you're tapping on something else. So as you tune into the issue that you wrote down, this is where the group tapping can be really helpful. Like, what's the intensity now? Notice for you and your issue, what happened with the intensity? Did it go up? Did it stay the same? Did it go down? And please know that in some cases, the intensity might go up before it starts coming down. And this is where being persistent can be helpful. If it goes up, just go back to tap and breathe until it comes back down. And then you can use this kind of formula. This is the simplest, it's basic EFT, and it's the simplest formula for using EFT. There are other techniques related to EFT. There's collarbone breathing, there's all kinds of stuff. And by the way, I am going to be offering a specific training for using EFT with trauma in November. So just let me know if you're interested in that. And I'm going to be collaborating with my friend and colleague, Tina Curran-Taylor. She's awesome at really knowing physiologically what's going on in the body. And she's got as much or more training in EFT than I do. So be persistent. That's going to be really helpful for you. And keep doing rounds. The other thing that I want you to know is the group, tapping in a group really does make a difference. Tapping with one other person makes a difference too. And that's important to know because you may be tapping on your own and you might not feel as much of a move in one direction or another. Just be persistent. So what often happens with folks that I'm working with is they'll feel a big shift when they're tapping with me, but when they're tapping on their own, they're like, I didn't feel that same way. That's pretty normal. Just know that you just keep tapping on it. Now I mentioned too that you can talk yourself through an issue. So that would be a third way that you can use EFT, which is years ago, in my last 6 months of working at ODU, I was not a happy camper. I found myself on days not at all wanting to go to work. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling before or not, but I would just be so, it was really, really hard. There were a lot of things that were going on. It was really, really hard. I would tap, before I leave the house, like I would be, I don't want to go to work, even though I don't want to go to work. It's okay, even though I'm going to give myself permission to not go to work. And then I don't want to go to work. And that's what that was my refrain. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to go to work. You can't make me. I am not going to work. I don't want to go to work. You can't make me. And you can see that even now, like the intensity was up. And by this point, it's not unusual for things to go, ooh, okay, I don't want to go to work. Okay, I don't have to go to work. I don't want to go to work. So even my voice tone changes, and that's one of the things that I noticed happening with EFT is you can start to pick up those really subtle changes in physiology. Voice tone, you can start to see people relax, the shoulders drop, they're taking different kind of breaths, and it just makes a difference. So I have used EFT with people who have beginning of a migraine, and I've done that 3 or 4 times over the years. One person, we completely thwarted a migraine, completely. And what we did is we tapped on every single aspect of the migraine as it was starting to develop, as well as the fears and the projection of what could happen. So every little aspect of the migraine and as it was developing, you know, and I'm afraid it's going to be like the other ones that I've had, I'm going to be in a dark room and so on. So we completely wiped out that migraine. And for the other 2 people, we dampened the intensity of a migraine as it, so it wasn't as bad as it had been in previous experiences that person had. You name it, I've probably used EFT with it at this point. Before everybody got on, my puppy was being a little bit of a imp. And earlier today, he actually was more than an imp. He was knocking things over while I was in session. So I was a little irritated with him. I've used tapping on myself for the dog. That's a whole other technique. And I've actually tapped on my dogs. And you can actually see a difference in them too. So the acupressure points are roughly the same on animals as they are in humans. Let's see what else I have here. That's fun step 2, all that stuff. So any questions at this point? Or comments? How's it going? Thumbs up, thank you. Appreciate it. So let's do another round so that you can really start to set this. And you'll see, just notice the short amount of time that it takes. This is what I tell clients. Like, do you have like 3 minutes that you can take to deal with an issue? Yeah, I can do something in 3 minutes. Do you think you can do something? Do you think that maybe 1 or 2 minutes might make a difference? Yeah, I could do something in 1 or 2 minutes. But to me, that's like one of the hooks. Like with you, then this is something that you can actually do and potentially get some results in 1, 2, or 3 minutes. You don't have to be tapping for a whole hour. And quick is good. So I'm gonna do the blank. I do this in the EFT group as one of the final final rounds is what I have. So whatever your issue is, is anybody still above a 2 as we've tapped on it? Not above a 2. Then think of another issue or aspect of that issue. Or yeah, think of another issue or aspect of the issue that you started with. And I'm going to leave some open spaces so that we'll do group tapping, but not on, I won't be talking about something specific. You, with the value of having a muted mic, will be able to say whatever you want. And I'll just kind of guide you through the steps from here. All right. So what we'll do is we'll use this frame to create a balancing setup statement. And you'll fill in the blanks here. So write down an issue, what the emotion is or feeling is, where you feel it in your body, and 1, 2, or 3 balancing statements. Just give me a nod when you've got that. Some of the phrases that I end up using, which I found out these days that my clients have started to seep into their daily thought process, which I think is brilliant, is I say things like when I'm tapping here, I said it before, of course I'm feeling this way. Why wouldn't I feel this way? Who wouldn't feel this way? That is that normalizing process for emotions. That's my twist to this. I don't think, I haven't seen other people say that, but I find that clients will come back and they'll say, well, I was tapping and I realized, or I wasn't even tapping, I was thinking, or, really getting into my emotions. And I'm like, well, of course I feel that way. So I see it seeping in different ways. It's kind of cool. All right, so make sure that you've rated the intensity on that scale from 0 to 10, where 10 is the most intense that it could be right now in this moment, right? So whatever that might be, 0 to 10. Not when it happened, but right now in this moment. Got it? Okay. So we're all going to tap together. You're going to fill in the blanks. Even though I feel, whatever the feeling is, because, and you can just substitute the issue. In my body, wherever it is in your body. Balancing statement number 1. You wrote down 3, just pick 1. So second time, even though I feel, whatever the emotion is, in my body, because whatever your issue is. Balancing statement number 2, or the first one if you only pick 1. All right, third time, even though I feel, because in my body. Balancing statement number 3. Okay. Now, top of the head, we drop the balancing statement. We're only going to use the issue. So this issue, whatever the issue is, in my body, wherever it is in your body, and I feel. Eyebrow. Of course I feel. In my body. Because I have this issue. Side of the eye. Why wouldn't I feel in my body this issue? Under the eye. I have this issue in my body and I feel. Under the nose, of course I feel about this issue in my body. Above the chin. Why wouldn't I feel? It's this issue. And it's in my body. Collarbone. Of course I feel in my body this issue. Under the arm. I feel in my body this issue. On top of the hand. It's in my body this issue. and the feeling. All right, so pause, take a deep breath, check in, rate the intensity now, 0 to 10. So by the way, I often keep water bottles in my session when I'm in person, and I actually, when I send a reminder text to clients, I ask them to make sure that they have something to write with or on and as well as water. All right, how's everybody doing? Did anybody have the intensity go up? Stay the same? Go down? So is anybody's more than a 2 right now? Nobody's more than a 2. Michelle, did you have a question or comment?
Oh, I was just gonna, yeah, no, it definitely, especially as we tapped on it earlier, you know, practicing the benefit of it kind of came over what it probably would have been much higher than before. I know
Begin
this
with.
was difficult for me to find something to put it to.
That's great. Okay, thanks for that. To do a second round on the same issue without changing the words, you would say this remaining issue. So this remaining anxiety about that phone call, it's in my throat, right? Or whatever it is. I encourage you to play around with balancing statements. I really love creating balancing statements with folks. And I like that phrase better than an affirmation. Affirmation itself these days is so loaded. It's sort of like pushing positive psychology down people's throats. And the problem with a lot of affirmations is that they set up this immediate conflict. And so even though the recommended balancing statement is, I deeply and completely accept myself, if somebody has this, I can't, that's a whole other issue that we're dealing with at the same time. So for them to use that statement that really feels like a lie, then you're doing double duty, I think. So I think it's important to choose a balancing statement that really works for that person and for you. And different ones work at different times.
I find adding like maybes to it, or like maybe I can blah blah blah, helps with some of the more intense negative.
Thank you for that, because we have, is it in the email still? I have a list of creeping up kinds of add-ons, like more and more or little by little, and I'm open to, maybe is one, what if I could, any of those kind of creeps in. So if somebody says, well, I want to believe, oh, okay, we'll use that. I want to believe. So that's okay too. So as long as you're not hitting up against another resistance when you're using a balancing statement, you're going to be fine. So a few comments on ethics. Now that you've learned this new technique, the ethical guidelines for our professions, those of us who are therapists, is to use informed consent with clients, which means that you just have attended a workshop, but you can invite clients to work with you as you learn. Making sure that if you're really interested in using this technique, that you get good at it, and it takes a good certification of training to define some kind of proficiency with this set of techniques. And often those certifications require some kind of supervision so that you can monitor the benefits and the results. And so the primary guideline, which is true for any ethical application, is if in doubt, don't. This actually I kept here because even though the Tapping World Summit was earlier this year, the tapping solution, so thetappingsolution.com has a yearly tapping world summit, and they invite over a course of 10 days, 4 speakers each day, and you can listen to it for free while it's going on. They offer a greatly reduced rate. They said 2 per day, but often there are 4. You have access 24 hours after the speakers speak for free, and it's new content every single time. But you can also purchase the video downloads these days. This is not a paid promotion. I have gotten so much from the Tapping Solution. They've been really generous. They've also made a lot of money off of EFT. There's a movie, the video, the Tapping Solution book that came out later. Video came out first, and then the book came out later. I just think that it's really well worth really listening, because they always have somebody talking about research and then different ways to apply EFT. So they have EFT masters and coaches speak about tapping. I do have an EFT tapping group. We meet Zoom, and we're going to continue to meet through Zoom. It used to be in person. I've had this group for 7 years now, maybe longer. It's twice a month. It's not every other week, but it's the first and third Saturday of each month from 10 to 11 a.m. First one's on me. The others are just $10. And if you want to join, just let me know. Promise I won't spam you. The emails come 3 days before the group starts, 2 or 3 days. And I just have an open PayPal, so you can pay me through PayPal. There's not usually a whole lot of people, and at this point, most people are clinicians. If I get a lot of folks attending the group, I will divide it into 2 so that I'll have a practice group for clinicians, and I'll have a practice group for folks who are wanting to just practice EFT that aren't clinicians. So eventually that'll happen. All right. And then I just want you to know this, because I love this. Years ago, I created this deck of cards, a toolkit for transformation. And last year, sometime last year, I decided, I can make short videos on these different tools and techniques. EFT is one, but I actually recorded one. And usually the videos are 1 to 3 minutes. They're short. They're like, here's a tool that you can apply in a pinch. And they're physiological related. They're ones that are emotionally related, ones that are spiritually oriented and energy oriented as well. The most recent deck is 72 cards. But what I've been doing is these short videos. The one from this week was about 16 to 18 minutes, something like that. And it was a guided meditation. And it's a guided meditation that evolved out of a session with a client that has been really powerful. So I invite you to listen to that. I keep those, I guess they're public now. I put them on my YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel. Just look me up, Suzan with a Z, Thompson. There actually is another Suzan Thompson. She's a dog trainer. so don't confuse the 2 of us. You'll see a difference. And let's see here. So thank you. I love to be a resource. You're welcome to contact me if you have a referral or to ask a question. So I'm going to stop sharing now. I do have resources for this, and I'm going to send you a video of the PowerPoint so that at least you'll be able to look back through the slides. All right, so I am. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. I want to stop share. And I want to